Welcome. This is our Unity in Edinboro Snowmageddon edition. And I'm glad that you all found the button to click to be here. Welcome. Today we will be talking about the sacredness of life. That's our topic for today. And at this time, I invite you into presence with us. So if we were in person, we would be lighting our candle in the sanctuary. We would be reminding everybody that we help each other in this time. We light the candle to show and to remind ourselves that we are all that light and that we carry that light with us. That we help each other affirm and act and be in that presence, knowing that we are divinity on this planet. So if you just take a moment with me and just take a breath, feel that life force flowing through you. Feel that connection, that light. So in this moment today, we honor life as sacred, all life. In this moment, we acknowledge the holiness of life. And as we gather together in this space, may we feel the wisdom present within and among us, recognizing our interconnectedness and our interconnectedness with all of divinity, all of earth, all of life. That we are all of us, all aspects of life, divine expressions unfolding together. I'd like you to just embody maybe the thought that life is not something that we have. It is something that we are participating in. We acknowledge that there's room for all of us. We acknowledge that even in our own systems, there has to be room for multiple types of activities, for our breath, for our organs, our cells. And on the earth, beneath our feet, there's all kinds of life, microbes and plants, each breathing in its own way. So as we acknowledge in this time together that we are each and that all life is holy, we recognize the intelligence of Spirit, of God, affirming there is wisdom present in all things, because divinity is wisdom. Thank you for taking that breath, feeling that music. In Unity, we do always affirm each and every week that God is not separate from creation. God is not watching life from out there someplace, that we are the expressions of God, living, breathing, walking, talking on this planet. Life is God, divinity, spirit, the universe, saying, let me know myself this way. And if we understand that, if we take that on, if this is true, then nothing is out of bounds for divine. Every person, every story, every joy, every sorrow carries a sacred weight. So then the question in our hearts and our minds and our being is not whether life is holy, but how are we relating to that divinity, that holiness that is with us and in us? Charles Fillmore, who is the co-founder of Unity, he taught that divine energy, spiritual energy, is intelligent, is responsive, it's creative, and that creation is never ever finished. So God didn't wave a wand, create the Big Bang, do a breath, and say, oh, there it is. It's, oh, there is something beautiful, and this life and this humanity and this universe can continue to create. That we are literally the hands and the mouth and the feet of creation. Myrtle, who is Charles' wife, she reaffirmed that. She says, we bless life. We are not making it sacred. We are recognizing that it always has been sacred. So God is life. Life is good, and we are unique expressions of that life. So our living from this perspective becomes an act of remembrance of who and what we are. That the diversity in ourselves and on the planet enriches the world, reminding us that we are really all interconnected and totally aspects of the whole. On Friday, I did a little talk, and I used the image of puzzles and puzzle pieces to say that, if we get a puzzle from the store and we open the box and we look at all the pieces, some of them are upside down, they're sideways, some you can see the color, some not. It's just a big jumble in the box. And we spend time with that. We sit with that. We get frustrated by it because we can't figure out how all the pieces fit. But we work with it with a sense of curiosity and wonder and purpose to try to put all those pieces to where we can recognize what the pieces are showing us. And here, our life on this planet, the universe, divinity itself, is a box of puzzle pieces that just never ends. It just keeps getting more beautiful and larger. Those of you that know me know I love Ken Wilber and his work on integral theory. And he talks about that we are always waking up to who we are in some form or another. He says we go from atoms to molecules, and from cells to organisms, and then from instinct to self-reflection, reminding us just through our lives that the universe is never, ever, ever static. It's always waking up. That consciousness unfolds through our stages of life, our stages of recognition, and so does all humanity. In fact, our little community of unity has gone through many stages. Cities, towns, countries, the whole world has gone through many stages in its existence, and it's essential. It's essential to move through a part of life, hit a part where we're like, oh, I get that aspect, and then to open up to new and more. It's the idea that we don't want to stay at one part of the staircase. We don't ever want to plateau in such a way that we don't see that there's another part to get to see even farther into the horizon. So a worldview that's shaped by survival will interpret the sacred real differently than one that's shaped by pluralism and integration. So as we mature in our spirituality, we learn to honor life across all developmental differences without collapsing either into some type of absolutism, without putting everything into such boxes that there's no room for growth. Because the sacred is present at every stage, everybody's stage. So the stage of us that had to learn how to walk and talk, and the stage of us that we are now. The stage of us that was a preschooler or kindergartner, and a stage of us that was the person when we graduated high school. The sacred is there at every stage. And our interpretations of our interaction with that should beautifully change with each stage and get larger and brighter and more encompassing. And life gives us those experiences. It gives us everything for that. Our families, our culture, our traumas, our joys, our healing, our education, our history, the spiritual language we use. When we decide to be in presence with each other on a Sunday or not. No two people experience any of these things the same way. That's why children growing up in the same household say they have different parents, because it's true, because that relationship between you and another person is never the same as somebody else and the same person. It doesn't mean there's neglect there or anything. It just means we really, truly have different perspectives. And when we have those different perspectives meeting each other, then we have different experiences with the same information, with the same people, with the same spaces. So spiritual maturity then doesn't ask us which one of us is right and which spiritual path and language and all that is better than the other. It's not that. It's not that. It's saying, how do I honor life without erasing the differences? How do I honor life, all life, without erasing all the different aspects that are possible? There's been a lot of research into self-compassion. There's a lovely book by Kristen Neff, and she is a researcher for compassion. And her research and other research shows that people who treat themselves with kindness are more resilient. They act more ethically over time. They recognize through their own work with compassion that all life is sacred, and that true devotion not only includes self, but it starts with self. So I know I used the word devotion last week, but the idea that we are devoted to our life, to our sacredness, and that we do that out of curiosity and compassion and love, not fear. It's finding our own self-worth so we can see the worth in things that maybe we don't understand or even agree with. Or maybe that's on a plateau or a stair that we're not on. Either however you want to visualize that. The quantum living process that is taught through Unity through Drs. Gary and Jane Simmons has a framework for this. It teaches that awareness is choice, but it's also a gateway to compassion and understanding, because when we allow ourselves to be aware of, we start to know what we don't know. And when we know what we don't know, then we have more choices. We start to recognize what we don't even know about ourselves. Where is our self-worth forgotten inside of ourselves? Where have we parceled that off? And again, when we can find that full worth of ourselves, and we're living in that, then other people start to see it for themselves in ways that maybe they couldn't before. We help each other. Again, we are all that light shining for each other. We can't get away from each other. As soon as one of us learns something, we start to allow others to find that same stair and plateau that we're on and see things a little bit from our perspective. Again, it's still going to be their perspective, but we have more of a sharing possible. So sacred living is not about perfection at all. It's about conscious participation, both with ourselves and then with everybody else. So Bruce Lipton is a biologist. He's written a lot about the interconnection between biology and spirit, and he has been able to demonstrate that our perceptions, both about ourselves and our environment, affect our biology. So think about that. The way and we all know that, if we start feeling really grumpy about something, we might get extra tired, or our stomach hurts, or all that stuff. But he's been able to take that right down to the cellular level, and to talk about things like how we do interact with ourselves really does cause not only perceptions of our outside world, but how our body reacts to us. And think about it. If we're not feeling good and we're not doing well physically and mentally and emotionally, we are not going to be doing well with anybody else at all. So he and Greg Braden talk a lot about the ancient wisdom showing up in our modern sciences. And they use the word coherence. It's that alignment within ourselves, our heart and our mind and our action. Again, starting with ourselves as recognizing how much we are sacred, embracing compassion for everything that we are. Our devotion to ourselves, our talents, our existence, our own healing. And then that sacred living becomes participatory. Now they use the word participating in the science, but we know that science and the divinity are all wrapped up in one. It's just a lens, a perspective of how we recognize it. So we start to realize that we really do, if we are shaping our own internal environment, our actions, our words, our thoughts, our feelings will shape our external environment. And it's not always fast. We want it to be fast. We want it to be so fast. And yet it does take some time. I shared with some people the other day that there were some things that my Qigong teacher, Master Robert Pang, he said to me, about how when we start to work on our things, now Qigong is a lot of physical and breathing, but then it moves into the emotional and the steadiness of ourselves and how we can be with ourselves. And he's like, once we start really, really understanding that and getting a grip on it and practicing that, then when we move around the world, things around us, we still interact with them, but we're not so, I'm going to use the word triggered. It's the only word I can find. Triggered either really, really high or really, really low. So we're not really triggered to be super, super joyful and express that, or really, really, the other way, sorrowful or angry. That we're able to find that middle space in our life. And in that middle space and in that piece of living, we're able to take on all of our joys and all of our sorrows in a more even state, and have a broader perspective. If we go back to the plateau, where we get to even a plateau where we can really see much of the horizon and what's going on. So that we can integrate those experiences a little easier and choose easier and wiser in what our part is in all of that. What part we can play, what part do we want to play, what part is ours to play. So healing occurs when compassion transcends the differences. Our healing starts to happen when we transcend all of the differences and conflicting things in our own life and our own fears, and then we're able to bring that healing out into our communities and our relationships with others. Because harm really occurs when we don't take the time for our personal healing. So, I would postulate that there's a whole bunch of people on the planet that don't even understand themselves enough to interact in a healing way with each other. So sometimes it's the few that have to start throwing tiny little pebbles in the water so that bigger currents can be made later. Because, if you have a lot of tiny little pebbles, then it starts getting really big. You might not think you're doing anything, but in a community of shared humanity and compassion, all those little pebbles start to do a whole lot in terms of healing what's necessary and integrating all of our life experiences, because life really is the divine experiencing itself. Life is the divine experiencing itself, and how we choose to move through that is how we're choosing to allow divinity to be experienced, not just by us, but by those around us. I'm going to take a breath here. And I have a little song for you. Some reflection questions to take with you today is: where do I recognize life as sacred? Where do I struggle to see it? And how do I treat my own life force, my own energies and talents? And what interpretation of the sacred am I living right now, in this very moment, and with this breath? And those questions can be applied any time of the day, any moment of our lives, any chance we get, just to take those few seconds and feel ourselves in that interconnectedness and interwovenness of all creation, of all life. Know how connected we are and how sacred it all is. So in closing today, we affirm that life is holy in all its forms. We affirm that we are each an expression of the divine learning itself, and that we choose to meet life with compassion, with curiosity, with care, with healing. May we each live as interpreters of the sacred, understanding that we hold the interpretation of the moment. And as we heal, as we grow, as we understand, that interpretation broadens, it widens, it accepts more, it allows for more communication for those that aren't in our particular viewpoint. May our ethics arise from reverence and devotion, not from fear. And may our devotion include ourselves in all things, also including the earth and all beings within the earth. Remembering always that we are the divinity we seek.